Whether it's leading from the front, building a world-class squad, or lifting the T20 World Cup, the best teams always put people first. That's exactly what WPA Health Insurance are doing in 2026, offering flexible health cover for individuals, families, and companies right across the UK. WPA are based in Taunton, Somerset, and are proud, long-standing partners of Somerset County Cricket Club. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. Australia are out of the T20 World Cup in the group stage. What went wrong for them? Do they even care? India look really, really good at the moment, even though Abhishek Sharma literally can't buy a run. Who's best placed to stop them in the next round? We've got loads lined up on today's show. I'm Yas, and with me is Ben Gardner. Later on, we've got a chat with one of my favourite English bowlers, a county legend, Jamie Porter. And we also hear from the managing director of the recreational game in England and Wales, Leshia Hawkins, about how the 100 money will affect the recreational game in England and Wales. Ben, Pathum Nissanka, is he England's player of the winter?
He might just be player of the winter, full stop, to be honest. It was such a brilliant innings, wasn't it? And he's just so much fun and so cool. I mean, I'll say the things that I always say about Pathum Nissanka, one of which is that all you need to know about him is contained in his forearms. You look at the size of his forearms and you can tell that there is a kid who has spent every waking second of his life, basically, that is not by something else, with a bat in his hand, trying to find someone to throw a ball to him, because he's just used those muscles so much.
And it's the forearm to bicep ratio, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing that is great is also the ratio of like elation between him and the rest of his team when he's done something amazing. It was the same at the Oval in 2024 when he hit a brilliant unbeaten match-winning century. And they were smiling a bit more this time than he was then. But both times he walks off the pitch, and you can tell there's just a little bit in his head that's like, it's a bit of a shame I don't get to keep batting now. Like, I wish they'd scored 20 more so I could just go and have a bit more of a hit. But he is absolutely brilliant, and obviously it's a brilliant story, isn't it? Where he's come from pretty humble origins, it sounds like, whereas his dad was a groundsman, which enabled him to play as much cricket as he did. But his mum would sell flowers the temple to make ends meet. And he's had to kind of graft at every level, almost overperforming what you'd normally expect to get the recognition he deserved. It's averaging 67 in first class cricket before he gets a test call up. Always went pretty well in terms of the runs he was scoring.
He was basically a blocker, wasn't he? Even in test cricket, he was a slow scorer. Then he gets into the white ball sides, he's a slow scorer. And we were talking about this on the way in today. There's a case to be made that he's in the top 2 or 3 all-format players in the world right now, partly because there aren't actually, all-format batters, partly because there are so few all-format batters who play in their national side across all 3. Yeah,
but the fact that there are so few, that doesn't make it less of an accolade, it makes it more of one, because it shows how hard it is to actually be this kind of all-format player. And you can actually, as you say, he's really remolded his game and is actually kind of still doing it. I think there was a bit of time in T20 cricket where he was sort of maybe a power play specialist, because he was more of a fours hitter than a six hitter. And he's still a pretty small guy, and those biceps are still small, at least compared to the forearms.
Other than the forearms.
Yeah, but you can see how he can sort of find ways to sort of generate the power and the scoring shots that he needs, like some of the sort of flays over the offside that were brilliant. And yeah, this game was decided the moment he dropped Glenn Maxwell. It was a sort of a swirling sky that I don't think he knew gets a hand to it, just goes right through him. And at that point on, he just put on complete game face, takes that absolute screamer a few boys later to delete Maxwell, and then batted like a man possessed, and then does that classic celebration at this point with the arms outstretched with his helmet off. He's a joy.
And a packed home crowd going wild as well. And there's a shot for me was the pull over deep square leg off Stoinis. It wasn't a very good ball. It was there to be hit, but the sound the ball made off the bat and then the sound that was directly followed by the crowd was amazing. And I think quite often in World Cup cricket, in cricket full stop, we talk about, does this matter? Do people care? And this was a really good example of people really caring and that transmitting through to the TV audience as well. I had a lovely time watching it, and so did the good people of the Wisden Discord. And I think this comment from Harry on the Discord is an accurate summary of the day on the Discord responding to the Australia-Sri Lanka game unfold. Harry said, "This place is genuinely much happier when Australia lose than when England win. This is generational hate watching." Jamie T said, "This makes up for the £5,000 I spent watching that shite over Christmas." Gaza Bobble says, "Mitchell Marsh must be thinking of happier times when his testicles were bleeding." it was genuinely like 6 hours after the game, people were still just gleeing in the Australia defeat. So if you like that, if you think you could add to that community, if these people are your people, get on board on the Wisden Discord and the Wisden Patreon.
Or if you're an Australia fan wanting to right some wrongs, go in there and fight the good fight.
Yeah. Other side note, just before coming here, I was looking for highlights of the Nissanka innings, and it is astonishing how crap the highlights are on YouTube. And I know that the ICC houses match highlights on their own website, which, by the way, are very difficult to find because they've got 6 different not very good clips around the same player or same moment. I find it astonishing how poor their match highlights are on YouTube. YouTube is the biggest video site in the world, and the ICC regularly send press releases to journalists boasting about digital numbers and breaking digital records in terms of viewership on Instagram, etc. And I'm like, well, the fundamental thing is, can people engage with the thing that's actually about the cricket the most? And that is the match highlights. And the match highlights for this game on YouTube are 62 seconds and include one Nissanka boundary. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah, and I mean, we know that you could do a whole podcast series on ICC rights and who has the rights to put videos where and that kind of thing. And we know that better than most, that it's often quite a convoluted thing, but also that cricket's whole attitude to video highlights and clips is a bit backwards, basically, compared to what you see other sports are doing in a way that helps grow the game, like encouraging creators to get involved rather than sort of penalising them. And this is even a step further back, saying like, it's not even that we're not going to let you post the clips, we're not even going to repost them ourselves. It's just, yeah.
I really don't understand it. I think there's the danger of overthinking it, thinking like, which influencer do we get involved with this tournament? Great, I'm not against that stuff, and getting people who have huge audiences in different spheres makes sense. But the most fundamental thing is you want to sell the main thing, which is the cricket, right? And that was a really good cricket moment. Show it. Show 5-minute highlights. What are wrong with 5-minute highlights? Like, surely no one loses if they have 5-minute highlight videos rather than 1-minute highlight videos, because you can't get across the narrative of the game or the momentum switches that make cricket a good sport.
Yeah, I mean, I do think cricket has an issue with highlights in general, and I'm still not sure exactly what makes a good cricket highlights package, because a massive moment in a T20 game can be a 2-run over in the 18th, and that's can be quite a hard thing to distill into a highlights package. So it's not sympathy there. I think that there is, but you'd rather be starting from a point of view of having these longer highlights packages you can make better, rather than arguing that you need these things at all. And it also comes down to cricket just believing it needs anything other than the game to sort of sell itself. When no, like an innings and a performance like this, it's cliche, but it does just speak for itself. Just put it up there, and you can't watch Nissanka bat and not kind of fall in love with cricket a little bit. So
after the washout between Zimbabwe and Ireland yesterday, Australia are officially out. What's going wrong with them in T20 cricket? Because it's not really a one-off. They've not got to the last 4 of the last 3 T20 World Cups. The one before in 2021, they win, but albeit in quite strange circumstances, in that it was a tournament where if you won the toss, you bowled first and then you won, and they won every single toss. You also if you go previously, back before those 2 tournaments, they didn't get to the semi-finals in the 2 tournaments before that. So it's 1 in 6 men's T20 World Cups that they've got to the last 4. What is up with Australia in T20 cricket? Because it isn't actually that much of a blip. And I know that we, as an England-based podcast, like to say before these tournaments, oh, well, you could never write off Australia. But actually, in T20 cricket, you sort of can. And their form going into this competition was so iffy that they sort of conned us all into thinking Pakistan were really good.
Yeah, it is funny that, and we're all waiting for that moment. Like, there's probably still some people out there think they'll find some loophole to get into the next stage and then win it. But yeah, I mean, I guess, and it is tricky because it is now a big sample size. They were good in the first 40 World Cups, apart from not making out the group stage and 1. They basically troubled the last stage, and since then they haven't done it. I think so. You're wary of just like drawing like firm conclusions, but it is notable, say, that their T20 competition clashes with the international cricket that they play, and therefore doesn't have their biggest stars in it. And also then their biggest stars are not in this group either. They're Steve Smith they didn't select, which is baffling, especially it's Steve Smith anyway, but especially considering how he played in the Big Bash. And where
the World Cup is as well.
Yeah, exactly. But then even putting that aside, they were missing missing Marsh and the 3 big quicks. Like, I think any team you take out their captain and their 3 premier fast bowlers, they're going to be quite a lot worse. But still, like Australia just have an iffy attitude to this, and it makes it frustrating the one time they did win it, because it's like, so now you're saying you care, and then when you lose you say you don't care. It's almost like a kid who's like, I wasn't bothered anyway, sort of thing. But I do think there is genuinely a thing where Australia, they don't see it so much as being important to be good at this thing, basically. And actually, some of those guys will turn up first week of the IPL in not too long and be, fine and ready to go. And if players were perceived to be missing even a T20 World Cup to be fit for the IPL, that would be, it would cause, outrage. People would be upset by that. In Australia, they almost just don't care enough to have that reaction. I think, and maybe there's a bit of ambivalence to T20 cricket in general. Like, the IPL has been a big thing, not just in India, but it's a global sports phenomenon, but it's an awkward time to watch it in Australia. So that would be a converting thing for some people to T20 cricket, as not just as entertainment, but as serious sport, I think, with how seriously that's approached and the tactics that get involved there. Whereas Australia, like the Big Bash is good and fun, but there is still an element of the sort of the carnival to it, the bucket hats, the fun stories of the guy you've never heard of.
It lives in its own world, really. Yeah. It's of Australian cricket for Australian cricket. And it's not, you look at even conversation around the 100 now, look how seriously these teams are taking the cricket side of the competition. Sure, the broader goals from the ECB originally were to grow the game, bring it to a new audience, but you see how seriously all the sides basically take it.
Yeah, and it's what makes the conversation around privatisation, the BBL, interesting and maybe even more thorny, because if there is going to be lots of private cash poured into this, they're not going to be happy with the situation where you don't have your best players. Is that what causes Australia to take it seriously, or is it going to be like a stumbling block to that privatisation, that they still want the BBL to sort of serve its purpose but not be at all the best of Australian cricket competition, because it's just never been what it is. Like Stark has basically never played a BBL game pretty much.
Yeah. So we know who the final 8 will be now, and the format is basically we have another group stage. So the 2 groups of 4, everyone plays everyone, top 2 go to the semi-finals. Really, I think if the tournament was true to itself, you just have a 3rd group stage after the Super 8, just have a Super 4s and then go from there. Why bother with the knockout stuff? And the other weirdness is that in the 2nd group stage, it's preceded based off the T20 I rankings from a few months ago. So regardless of whether England finished 1st or 2nd in their group, they would be in a pool with Pakistan, Sri Lanka and New Zealand. So poor old West Indies, who topped their group with England, their reward is being paired with India and South Africa, 2 other table toppers, and who you'd say are the 2 form sides in the competition. I mean, it's a nonsense nonsense way of doing it, because you should be rewarded for finishing 1st.
You definitely should be. I mean, there are obviously logistical considerations at play in this case, which obviously are not a good thing. But if we accept that Pakistan might play in India, and maybe from an optics point of view, from making the crowds look good, you want Sri Lanka to be playing their games at home. You might want an element of preceding there. So if it were the case that 2nd were to go into, obviously, I guess when you have India and Pakistan in the same group, you can separate them off and say that whichever games Pakistan will play, they're going to be in Sri Lanka. But I can see how logistically it gets tricky. And there was then that criticism in the last World Cup that you had teams who, like, almost that India knew their route to the final, no one else did. So you had teams flying to Guyana just in case they had to play a semi-final there, and then flying out and that sort of thing. And it's almost as if they've taken the criticism that India know their route to the final, no one else does. That's unfair. They'd be like, right, well, everyone will know the route to the final. It's like, well, yeah, sort of, but not quite. But so it is obviously rubbish for a tournament, but that is going to be the case if you host these games across 2 countries, first of all, and where some of the countries won't play in other countries does make it logistically tricky. But yeah, and it's not just because the group stage has been by and large fun. I mean, I think we would have liked an upset or 2 more from like the proper sort of associates. Obviously Zimbabwe beating Australia's fun, but like from an associate side to beat a full member would have been,
well, Netherlands have got fun. India on the ropes right now.
That's true. Yeah, maybe that's the one. But also just in terms of jeopardy, like the 1st and 2nd place thing would have helped there. But also actually, I would much prefer if qualification for the next World Cup was much more determined by performance in this World Cup. So basically the top 8 get through, and it's the hosts, Australia and New Zealand, get through. So Australia, there's no danger they don't make to the next World Cup, unfortunately. But I would also like it if basically the 3rd place team in the 1st group stage also qualify for the next World Cup. That would put so much more on, say, the Scotland-Nepal game yesterday, which was already a brilliant game of cricket, but would put even more on that sort of thing and keep a bit more interest in it and be just more satisfying than the rankings, which are pretty hard to understand, as we found out today with people suggesting Australia's Olympics qualifications in jeopardy when it actually seems like it's not. They're going to be fine. But that just shows that, it's just not a great system for deciding who makes these global events.
Yeah. So who do you think is going to get through to the semi-finals? I suppose on one side, India, South Africa, West Indies, Zimbabwe. India and South Africa will be massive favourites. So West Indies played good cricket in that game against England, but it's no shade on them. It's more just how good South Africa look on paper, but also what we've seen in the tournament.
Yeah, but then I guess the thing, I would put India and South Africa favourites for sure. But what then is interesting about that group is because you have Zimbabwe in there, and that
and they could actually beat anyone, as they showed against Australia.
That's true, but it's also a weaker 14 than West Indies might have been expecting. So West Indies will probably hope there's a situation where I guess India beat everyone, them and South Africa beat Zimbabwe, and then they would think like in a one-off game against South Africa, could we turn one over of them possibly, or that they need to beat one of South Africa or India to get through. They might think we could do that. So, but yeah, I think South Africa, India, favourites from that group, and then the other group,
which is England, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, New Zealand.
Yeah,
that's hard to call, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I guess,
and all these games for that group will be played in Sri Lanka.
Yes, and should we leave England for a second? Because Pakistan obviously, got hammered by India. There's questions there of the makeup of that side. I think it looks interesting that they pushed Babar down the order. Now it'd be interesting to see, does he stay in the side?
And they've got Fak as a man on the bench.
Yeah, which is so there's good players in there. I mean, Sahib Zada Farhan actually looks like a
best
pretty
player
good
in the world that no one's heard of or recognise. I reckon 99% of English listeners to the pod wouldn't recognise him. I think.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and maybe 90% of them probably hadn't heard of him, and he's ranked third in the world in the T20 rankings.
Yeah, and is top 15 for all time T20 centuries now.
Amazing.
That was his seventh or eighth today. England have never faced an Usman Tariq before, have they? So
yeah, I think he's averaging 8 in T20I cricket at the moment. Yeah, so that'd be fun.
So that'd be fun. I think that group could almost be the more fun group, and then Sri Lanka, obviously England beat them 3-0 before the World Cup, but I look at them and think that's a pretty good side, even though it's a shame for what Patharana's ruled out of the tournament. That is a real blow for them. And then New Zealand again, sort of capable, but again the injury to Bracewell is again just a bit of a blow. So I guess we'll talk about England, I guess, now.
Let's talk about England now. So how do you feel about England? Because we've been talking about this in the office, and you've been probably more upbeat about England's chances than the general vibe. England have had wobbles in all 3 wins against the associates to varying degrees. Only just got over the line against Nepal. The game against Italy, they win by 25 runs, but Italy need 30 off the last 12 with someone in Grant Stewart who'd shown in the previous 12 deliveries that was very much doable. They only get to 200, partly because of the Will Jacks 50 off 22 balls. The Scotland game was more comfortable, but Scotland would probably look back on that and think they let some opportunities go, and they were comfortably second best against West Indies. This is actually after having a pretty good year in T20I cricket, where they'd only lost 1 of their games in the whole year running up to the tournament. So yeah, how do you see England at the moment?
So yeah, I think it is hard to draw firm conclusions from a T20 World Cup group stage where teams will be so up for playing England in particular. Obviously, it's been an easier group without Bangladesh in there as well. So to squeak through a group that's been made easier for you. But also, I think in that Scotland and Italy game, there's different between having a real sort of proper scare that you're kind of lucky to win, which is the Nepal game, versus a game where you are the better side. They're just a sort of little moments of jeopardy. And you mentioned the Will Jacks innings, that is still a player that England have picked doing something good. So they deserve that's not England getting lucky because when their players did something good, that's an England player doing something good. And they've picked Jacks at 7 because that's the balance of the side they want to do. They've picked a guy who can do that at 7 because that's how that team functions. I think and talking about, if we want to get into the more nitty gritty, like the stuff with spin in the middle overs, Banton being back in a little bit of form could help that a bit. And then the other way to look at it is that I think you've got a top 2 there in Salt and Butler, neither of whom have come to the party, who you would before have said England's premier T20 players. I mean, Butler's averaging in the teens in this tournament, or maybe even sub-teens, maybe it's 12 or something. And Butler never has a bad T20 competition by the end of it. I was looking, it was the Bangladesh Premier League in 2017 was the last time he played more than a handful of games and averaged less than 25. So you'd expect him to turn up at some point. I mean, it was only a small snapshot, but I really liked Archer's first over against Italy. He takes 2 wickets, but it was the second wicket especially was just prime Arch sort of rising in the corridor. I think
I agree with you. I also fear that we could be doing a World Cup debrief in a week's time and think, did we get a little bit too excited about Archer's spell against Italy?
Well, yeah, for sure. And I think this is the thing with T20 cricket. Like the difference for England getting to the semi-finals and therefore having had a good World Cup or not is probably the difference between winning 2 games and 1 against teams where they're like, even like a very good England side isn't going to be more than like 65% favourites. I think that this England side might be somewhere around 55% favourites in some of these games. So it's just going to be...
It's really, really interesting. And I think the conditions make it more of a leveler. I think on paper you'd say New Zealand and England are the best 2 sides in this group, but because of where the games are, I think that they're all pretty much at a similar level. I think England are a flawed side, but I don't think there are any flawless sides at this World Cup, and I include India in that. I think there are obvious weaknesses that I think teams will attack like West Indies did. Shea Hope, before the West Indies game, said that they brought in Roston Chase to give them an additional spin option for the England left-handers. They end up bowling almost exclusively spin throughout the middle overs. Chase, Akhil Hussain and Gudakesh Moti with his mixture of wrist spin and finger spin. I think teams are going to do that against England. I don't think England's middle order guys who, between them, with the exception of Brooke, none of them really bat in those positions in domestic T20 cricket or franchise cricket. So they are not used to starting against spin, certainly not in that part of the world. So expect spin to be bowled at them loads in the middle overs. How they deal with that, I'm not sure. And I think their bowling attack is also quite strange in that, again, it's because of the players they have at their disposal. It's not as if there's a guy in domestic cricket who's taking loads of wickets in the IPL who England are leaving out from their side. They don't really have, and it's similar to the discussions we had in the Ashes as well, they don't have great seam bowling depth at the moment. So the way they've gone around it is they've packed the side full of all-rounders, give them extra batting depth. It allows them to go a little bit harder. But it does mean that you don't really have a new ball specialist alongside Jofra Archer. Archer's own new ball and death numbers are not very good over the last year or so. And they were vulnerable against West Indies. They didn't really stick to their guns enough, I think, with Liam Dawson, where they were a bit match-uppy. Because West Indies had Hetmar and Rutherford, they were a little bit reluctant to use Dawson, end up using Will Jacks, who's an inferior bowler to Liam Dawson. Jacks goes the distance, and he didn't bowl very well in the Italy game as well. So I think there are weaknesses there. But, you know, is it the worst thing in the world if you acknowledge your weaknesses, have the ability, capacity to improve mid-tournament? I don't think so. I would be surprised if England are tactically inflexible given what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and that's exactly pretty much where I am as well, is that like there are definitely flaws, or this isn't how you construct sort of a franchise side with how you're constructed, but I just look at like player quality, and I think that if you could simulate this group stage, this Super 8s sort of 100 times, England would get through it more often than they wouldn't, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will. I'm interested, do you want to give me your India flaws?
There's something, and this is very old school, none of them play Test cricket. And this is a serious point, franchise cricket is different to World Cup cricket. I basically view when it's a 15, 16, 17 game competition, so many of your games where you stack up the numbers and make you look really good are almost like computer simulations played out in real life, in that players, especially now where the whole thing is be aggressive, it's so much easier to do that if that's the message over 15 games and there's not a whole lot of consequence for losing individual matches. Whereas you have to be made of something special to not feel that sort of pressure in a World Cup game. So that is different. Abhishek Sharma is arguably the best player in the IPL. He's literally not got a run yet this competition. So I don't think franchise success necessarily translates to T20 World Cup success. I mean, they didn't win the 21 or 22 competitions. So yeah, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion at all. Their bowling attack is the one that makes me look, that is really good. But I can see in the same way that today, this podcast will go out after the Netherlands game, but they have been patchy with the bat against the Netherlands. They're going at under 8 and over at the time of recording, 4 wickets down. Tilak Verma at 331 or 27. Is he a world class number 3? And again, in World Cup semi-finals, you will face a higher caliber of bowling attack than you do in most IPL games. I don't know. Shivam Dube is really good. Is he like truly world class? Is he better than the South African middle order players? not for me. So I don't think they're a flawless side. They're the best side. But I can see how they could lose an individual game.
It's the lack of Virat Kohli, basically. I mean, not that, at his age now and having, retired from T20 cricket in such beautiful circumstances that he should be in there, but that was what he was just so good at, was in those sort of pressure situations. Even the games they didn't win, like the 2016, was it, World T20 semi-final. I was thinking about the West Indies game, the Lendl Simmons game, but they dropped him, so they should have won that game anyway. But, bats so beautifully, runs loads of twos. Again, the final in 2024, when he's just like, right, I'm making sure we get like up to a total here. I'm going to see out a tough spell of bowling and we're going to get there. Like, he is just so sort of gnarled, but just experience at those situations that, I agree. I wonder if they could just miss that. Equally, Abhishek Sharma has a T20 record that is like freakishly unlike any other, and you'd assume at some point he might well
score a run. He might score a run.
So,
Imagine if he goes the whole tournament without scoring a run. On New Zealand, you mentioned they've lost Michael Bracewell. Tell us about Cole McConkey, the 34-year-old offie who's played a handful of games for New Zealand a few years ago. Who is he and why have New Zealand called him up?
Yeah, you've taken out a lot of what I know by calling him a 34-year-old offie who played a handful of games for New Zealand in the last few years. So
Tell me what he did last summer.
He plays a lot of club cricket, and last year for Netherfield CC up in Cumbria, he had one of the great club seasons, it looks like. So he's listed as an all-rounder, which is just about fair looking his overall
generous,
his overall stats.
Very generous.
I mean, he's got 11 first-class hundreds, which is more than Zach Crawley, maybe. No,
probably not now.
Okay, but anyway, for Netherfield,
I'm looking it up.
He got last summer he played 38 games, averaged just over 50 with the bat and under 20 with the ball. So that's pretty handy. And he looks like, he played a lot of Super Smash cricket, goes well in that.
Crawley's on 12, by the way.
Okay. So he's got more than Cole for the moment. So he's what am I saying about Cole McConkey? So he's got a very good Super Smash record. That's the only T20 cricket he's played.
And he's basically your classic New Zealand pick, in that New Zealand don't really pick project players if they don't have to, basically. They've looked at, we've got an injury to our off-break bowler who bats a bit. Who's the next best? It doesn't matter if they're only ever going to play in this tournament. It's a bit like they had success against India in the white ball series that preceded this World Cup with a guy called Jaden Lennox, who's a 31-year-old specialist left-arm spinner. He's just the best guy for the job, so pick him. It's something that England basically don't do or haven't done so much until recently. You say, like with Liam Dawson, Sam Curran and Jamie Overton coming into it. I know they're not necessarily the most popular England picks at the moment, but those probably are guys, actually. They just looked at who's the best player in our domestic competition. It's those three. You don't care how old they are.
Yeah, and you'd think there'd be two ways it could go for a character in that situation. If you're a 34-year-old who's always kind of played at a level, you suddenly get thrown into a level above, you think you might possibly get a bit overawed, but something about New Zealanders just doesn't seem to faze them in the same way. Like, all their sort of journeyman all-rounders have like one all-time great performance they've put in, and McConkey can't do that in a World Cup semi-final. And he's also gone all right in the international cricket that he has played, going at under 8s in T20Is. He got, a 50 with the bat on ODI debut. So we'll see how he goes.
Yeah, we will see that. Other guy we've got to mention before we move on, Yuvraj Samra, the 19-year-old Canadian who became the youngest player to score 100 at a men's World Cup against New Zealand the other day. Pretty good New Zealand attack too. Matt Henry, Carl Jameson, Jacob Duffy, Jimmy Neesham among the bowlers used. So guys who get a lot of expensive gigs in franchise competitions. That's it for part one. In part two, a chat with one of the best uncapped players in England. So in the upcoming Wisden Cricket Monthly, we are releasing a list of the best 50 uncapped men's cricketers in England. The cappedness refers only to Test cricket. So some guys who played white ball cricket for England are on the list. We've asked dozens of journalists who follow county cricket, but specifically individual counties, to provide us with their top 10s. And we've ended up with the top 50. It's a really fun list that we won't yet reveal. But one of the strands that I thought was quite interesting was how few seam bowlers there are on the list. And when you think about the conversations we had during the Ashes about who could come in for England in the bowling attack that wasn't in the squad already, not many people had answers. Not many people were saying there's so-and-so who's taking lots of wickets in Division 1. So I decided to have a chat with perhaps the most authoritative voice on the topic, Jamie Porter, the top-ranked specialist seamer on our list. He was included in a test squad in 2018, but has never played a game for England. He's been a wicket-taking machine in recent years, 162 wickets and 19 across his last 3 seasons. Here he is on how county cricket has changed over the years, where seam bowling is at in England and his own international ambitions. For the upcoming magazine, we've done a list of the best county cricketers who've not played Test cricket yet. And we've asked 50 or so journalists across the country, guys and women who specialise on different counties, so a real good geographical spread. And you've ended up being the top-ranked specialist bowler on the list by some distance. So I'm really interested to hear your reflections on county cricket over the years. It's been a decade or so since you made your Essex debut. How would you say the game has changed as from your perspective as a bowler? Is county cricket that different now in 2026 to 2015, 2016?
I think the wickets have changed considerably in the last probably 4 or 5 years. Definitely they've gone more kind of tilted toward more in favour of the batters, I'd say, than they were the first half of my career. Obviously the scheduling's become a bit manic. So that, I think, has hindered the standard a little bit. You know, it's very rare that outside of maybe the first 4 games that you're playing against someone's best 11. And the other thing, I mean, when I started, it was only the IPL. So there was a lot more overseas players around. Whereas now, you know, those guys that were kind of in between the red ball and the white ball have had to choose a side, and that's changed the dynamic a lot. It's become a lot more specialist, I'd say.
On the pitches, if you go back 5 or 6 years, there was probably a period around the time of the pandemic when scoring was a bit lower. From your perspective, how has that affected the skills on show? Do bowlers have to be more skillful now than they had to be 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's certainly, there was a period where you could literally just run up a wobble seamer and get someone out. You know, we saw that for a period. There was a period kind of, you know, 2015 to 2019 where there were guys just plodding. No disrespect, it still takes a hell of a lot of skill to do what they did. But, you know, you could just plop it on a length and eventually someone's going to get out. Like, there was always a ball with someone's name on it. Whereas now, I definitely think the bowlers we're seeing coming through they're definitely more rounded. Like, they're probably, if anything, more tailored to bowl on better wickets. You know, as you know, I think of someone like, I don't know why Gilchrist at Warwickshire, previously Kent, just springs to mind for some reason, but more guys like that, like big, strong, hit the wicket bowlers, which I think is good for county cricket.
And you say that the pitches have got better for batting over the last few years. Your record with the ball has been unbelievable over the last 3 years. 162 wickets at 19. What have you done differently now compared to, say, 4 or 5 years ago?
I think it's more a mentality shift. I think, you know, you go kind of between 2019 and 2022 was that period of, you know, I just, you know, was it 2018 pick for England, and it was kind of so close, and you kind of come out of that and you think, you know, my head just got, you know, it took me to places that weren't me as a cricketer. You know, I went away from my strengths, so I explored different things, and I think, you know, a few things changed in my life, and kind of got a bit of perspective and just realized, you know what, I'm very, very good at this. I'm not really going to worry too much about everything else. And yeah, just, I suppose my mentality shifted. I got less worried about whether it looked pretty or ugly, and just tried to be effective and do what I do best, which is probably bowl at the stumps and challenge both sides of the bat.
So yeah, what is this that you do very well? Is it just target off stump, just outside off stump, and are you predominantly a wobble seam bowler now, or do you still look to swing the ball?
Yeah, I'd say wobble seam is my kind of super strength. and that's what predominantly looking to bowl. Obviously, certain grounds where you've got to dip into other skills, kind of the oval being probably the main one where wobble seems great for the first 20 overs. Then, as you see, like what Dan Worrell and Jordan Clark do so well, is they swing it kind of at the back end of the ball, where the ball gets a bit softer. And to be successful there, I think that's what you've got to do. So I've worked hard to kind of keep that as a secondary skill, but yeah, wobble seam and bowling at the stumps, I think is, it sounds quite simple, but I think that's kind of what I've built my career on, being kind of really kind of annoying for batters, not making them play at every ball. And some days you might leak a few extra runs because if you don't hit your length from straight, you're in trouble. But for me, yeah, that's probably just where I've felt I have the edge on some other guys.
And you've formed an amazing partnership with Sam Cook over a really long period of time. Talk to me through what it's like sharing a new ball with him, bowling at the other end with him, and coming up with plans for batters, etc. with him too.
Yeah, I mean, he makes my life so much easier. I mean, he just doesn't go for runs and doesn't miss. So it definitely frees me up at the other end, makes me feel like I can be that little bit more attacking. I certainly feel the difference. Last year he wasn't in the side as much, and you feel like you kind of at times have to absorb a bit of that role, which can be a bit more stressful. But yeah, I mean, in terms of plans together, I think we are quite different in how we. Although people would say we're quite similar, we're probably quite different in how we would approach bowling and bowling at certain batters, but which I think is probably actually a big strength of ours, because it's not like we're both just bowling around the wicket, angling it in. We're doing different things from each end, so it's kind of presenting a different challenge, and some days that'll give him the wicket, some days it'll give me, but it means that we're always kind of asking different questions and exploring kind of different things.
Quite interested in what you said earlier about the young bowlers coming through now potentially being better rounded. If you look at the numbers in the championship over the last few years, there aren't that many seamers taking bags full of wickets, averaging in the low 20s. And also, when we did this list, probably the most striking thing actually is how few seam bowlers are on this list. Would you say a lot of that actually, in that perception, is down to the pitches, in that now averaging high 20s, 30 odd with the ball is actually a serious effort given the way pitches have been over the last few years?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. There's, you look, I reckon the general age of seam bowlers around the game now is quite young. So there is a little bit of an element of these guys are still finding their way. County cricket's unique. You're playing 90% of the games where you're not feeling anywhere near 100%, but you've got to figure out ways to be effective. And, that took me a good few years to work out. And yeah, I suppose it's, the wickets have been dull. And some of these guys, I look around at, some of the guys I've got like my little book of probably my favourite bowlers that I like to keep an eye on around the country. And some of them just have bad luck. Like, they play 1 in 3 games or whatever to manage their loads, and they just always seem to get the stinking wicket, which is a 500 plays 500. And if you're only 3 seasons into your career, then it's hard to stack up good numbers, I guess.
So who are the bowlers you like to keep an eye on?
So obviously Dan Worrell, always. I mean, he makes bowling look so easy. He doesn't get like ugly wickets. So he'd be number 1. So I like watching Gilchrist bowl at Warwickshire. Ethan Bamber as well. Fella nipper. I liked watching George Hill this year. I think he could be a really, really just good cricketer.
I watched him at the Oval this summer, and he's a bit like watching your mate Cook. He just never misses a length. He just bowled 25 overs in a day and just didn't bowl a single full or short ball.
Yeah, and he's a lot more skillful than people might think as well. I actually faced a bit of him in the game at Chelmsford this year, and he can swing it both ways, and he's got a really good wobble seamer. So he's got all the tools. He's probably not the quickest, but he's a lovely batter as well. So there's a lot to like there.
I wanted to ask you to get your quick perspectives on some of the batters who've come in the top 4 in our list. And I reckon one of them's a teammate of yours, and you'd have played against a few. I guess a couple of them a fair bit, but not loads. So top of our list is James Rue. What are his strengths as a batter? Obviously, he's had a lot of success so far in his early county career.
He's very strong for the offside. That I learned the hard way. I just think he's got. I honestly don't find it hard to, I haven't played quite a lot against him. I find it hard to believe that he's not had as much opportunity. I get like Jamie Smith in that role I know he didn't have the best Ashes, but he is a phenomenal player, and that's tough competition. But Rui he's just a run. He churns them, and he's not a blocker. He's got the gears. He plays spin really well. Yeah, I don't actually see a weakness in his game. Granted, I probably haven't seen him face proper pace. That would be the only thing I've not seen. But other than that, he plays spin well. And I mean, we've got probably the best spinner to judge him off. And yeah, he's just really organised, and as I say, paces his innings so well. Gets himself in and then lets you have it a little bit.
Number 2 on the list is James Coles, who had a really good winter. I don't think you'd have played loads against him in the championship, but yeah, from the game or so you would have played. What have you thought?
Yeah, played him for the first time this summer. Looks a really nice player. I'll tell you what is a kind of a way you can, a quick way to judge a player is you can quickly tell in this particular game anyway, their whole batting innings kind of revolved around him. He kind of held their innings together, both innings, and obviously how old would he be? 2021. So that's to be able to kind of carry that responsibility at that age is impressive, and he looked a really nice player.
And then number 3 is a teammate of yours, Jordan Cox.
Oh, he's a joke. He's the best I've seen. He is he's on another level. I mean, he's just more in the unlucky boat, because if he hadn't broke his hand in New Zealand, he would have played, and who knows what would have happened after that. But I've not seen anything like it at that age. Like some of the stuff he can do, it's not just the sheer weight of runs. He's taken the attacks apart, and attacks with guys that have played a good chunk of Test cricket with success, and just making them look like park cricket. It's ridiculous.
I mean, you've played with and against some pretty special players. What is there an innings that maybe stands out where he's played against a really high quality attack and take them apart?
Yeah, Hampshire last year. So not the season just gone, the season before. I think I got 200. I can't remember if I got 200 or close to 200, but it was ridiculous. I mean, they've got Abbott, who for me, Kyle Abbott is the best bowler. Well, top 2 him and Dan Worrell, the top 2 seamers in county cricket. He is phenomenal. He doesn't miss. Ball's always doing something. Still quick enough, and he, just made it look pedestrian. And I want to be careful what I say, because I don't want to show any disrespect to Kyle Abbott, because he is the GOAT. And then Mohamed Abbas as well, another one who's just, the ball's fizzing on the way down. That's how much this. And who else did that? I think I can't remember if John Turner played as well. Obviously, someone with a bit of pace. But it was just he just took the whole attack apart. Even Dorf's, he just, when he gets going, it just looks too easy.
And then 4 on the list is Emilio Gay. I imagine you'd have played maybe a couple of games, one for Northampton, one for Durham against.
Yeah, I played a few times against him. Yeah, he's a really nice player. He's got a lot of time, really well organised. It looked like he tried to be a bit more positive this year. obviously paid off. He had a good season at Durham. And also, like, you see a lot of players make that move to a Division 1 club and find it tough. Takes them a while to find their feet, but he's obviously stepped his game up. So yeah, I think there's a really good player there. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier how in the county game at the moment there are a lot of young seamers who are just making their way, and you used the example of a guy might not play 3 games, workload management. He comes in one game, plays on a road where it's 550, plays 500, and that's pretty tough. What do you think about how young seamers are managed? You'll hear some players from previous generations saying that actually the most important thing is just playing and bowling a lot and finding out more about your bowling. Obviously, at the same time, you have to be careful around the physical risk of bowling too much. But do you think that balance is right at the moment? Obviously, the other thing in this conversation is just the schedule and the relentlessness of that. Yeah. Do you think that the balance is right at the moment?
I think it's a tough one to answer because I can only kind of relate it to me. And I'd hate to be 1 on 2 off. But I've never bowled 90 mile an hour and I've never had that many injuries. So I can, it's a lot easier for me to play every game, and I've kind of gathered quite a lot of experience of doing it. So I know I've figured out ways to be effective when I'm not feeling great. I just think it's the way the schedule is. I think, like, I know there's been a lot of talk about comparing our system to the Australian system. Like, I've spent the last 5 or 6 years, 5 years coming out here, kind of for a period of time before pre-season, and spent a lot of time training with Victoria and seen how their system works. And I've never seen a first class team train like that, but they can, because the whole system is like, even from the grounds to the schedule, it's all dialed in at performance. You play a majority of your games at what we would call an outground, but it's like Junction Oval here. It's like a mini Loughborough, but it's better than Loughborough. It's you got unbelievable outdoor nets. You've got a massive indoor school, gym, just everything you need to be a better player. And that's kind of what's missing in county cricket, is it's all tailored around the members. They control everything, but it's kind of there's no disrespect to the members because they pay our wages, but that's kind of what's pulling it back, because there's just no, what are we playing for? Are we playing for profit? Which I don't see many clubs making profit through cricket. So, why not gear it? Like, if we play, even if you just trim off 2 games, you get an extra day in between games. At least that's 1 day you can train properly, because the 3 days between games now, 1 of them's off. After a few games, 2 of them are off. The day before a game, I'm bowling 6 balls. That's not training. That's just getting ready for the next day. And I think that's where county cricket is suffering. Is it's just you survive. You're not improving much.
Yeah, do you just explain to us how difficult that early season chunk is for when you're in a bowling attack like Essex have had over the last few years? You've often fielded an attack where it's pretty consistently been yourself, Sam Cook, Shane Snater, and Simon Harmer. You've got 7 games in 8 weeks. I don't think it's quite the same in 2026, but the flip side is that the August-September bit is more brutal than it's basically ever been before. Just how difficult is it as a bowler to go back to back to back to back to back?
Yeah, it's tough. Well, I think I did all 7 last year, and do you know what the worst thing is? Is actually we played 3. I think we played 3. Then we had that week off. Then coming back to start the 4. That first game back was actually the hardest one, because you haven't actually done a lot. You haven't done a lot in that week off because you're so cooked from the 3. Because the other thing is, like, I know there's this stereotype that it nips around in April. I mean, that's an absolute lie. It's the best time to bat. So because all the wickets are fresh, the ground staff have actually had time to do their job. Because that's another story. Like, the groundsmen just can't, they can't look like after that after halfway through the season, with the amount of women's cricket as well now, there's the squares are just ruined. So they just have to take all the grass off and kind of make them even less enjoyable about them.
Yeah, the stats bear that out, by the way. So it might have changed in 25 because of the Kookaburra rounds might have skewed it, but April is statistically the best time to bat. It is the highest runs per wicket ratio for a month, and that goes back quite a long way. So yeah, I don't really know how that myth has been able to travel so far, but it's just not true.
Yeah, I know. I think there might be a little bit of a it's a bit Sky Sports tax, I think.
I just wanted to get your perspective, and I suppose going out to Australia, you might have an interesting view on this. I guess the comparable connection between national team and domestic game. So if you look at Australia, when they've got one of the greatest bowling attacks of all time, the big three in Nathan Lyon. But when one of those guys goes down, if you look at the guys who come up, it's Scott Boland, who's 36, Michael Neser, who's 35, Brendan Doggett, who's 32. Whereas in England, we seem, and I think our list reflects this, and I found it quite interesting just how young our list is. There seems to be an almost obsession with youth, not just from selection, but also in the media. And it feels like we almost don't realize that people can get better over time and that experience is a really valuable thing. And actually, when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, that's not that old. What do you feel about the connection between national team and domestic cricket?
But over in Australia, or
but both actually, just the comparison between the two.
I think it's quite different, the two countries. Like, see, even like some training with Geelong and playing Vic Prem, and the boys are all like, the boys' motivation, like especially the younger lads who, up to probably 26, some of them they'll probably be trying to make it. They're only 3 games away from like either going into the second team or in some cases going all the way up. They're 300s in the trot or 5-4 or something like that. Like they're in with a chance. And I think it's kind of, you see how quick someone can get picked. They can pick a bloke from Shield cricket who's played 6 games in some cases, or as you said, like someone more seasoned. I think the difference is success is rewarded, no matter who it comes from, and what they do. I think Michael Neser is a great example of that. Everything we're taught to believe is not going to be successful in Australia. 5'11" or 6 foot, whatever, not very tall, 80 mile an hour, but high skill and battle season. Like he's been in the trenches. He's got his wickets. He's got some runs. He's done it both Australia and England. So he's like in terms of problem solving in a test match, he's probably as well equipped to do that as anyone. And I think it's obviously a bit different at the moment in England. Again, I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but for me, like it's a bit frustrating just knowing that if I'd have done this 5 years ago, I'd probably be in with a chance of playing. And right now, I kind of feel like it doesn't really matter what I do. It's just not on my thoughts. I don't think about playing for England anymore. I just think about what I can do with Essex.
And do you think that's changed over the years? Do you think that early on in your career, if you put up the 3 seasons that you've just put up, that your hat is in the ring more so than it is now?
Yeah, well, I think I got picked off the back of taking 75 wickets in a season, championship wickets. So that kind of proved to me, and I wasn't as good a bowler then as I am now. I put the performances in and got the rewards. And I get, things have got to change and you've got to try different things and whatever. I just, I feel like there's still a lot of talent in county cricket, and a lot of, there is an element of a lot of us are pretty battle hardened now. We've done we've grinded it out, and I think that's worth something. You know, like you gain a lot of knowledge through doing that.
I just wanted to finish by asking you a question about another young Essex player who had a brilliant year in 2025. Talk to me about young Charlie Allison.
Oh, he's a player.
Yeah?
He's a player. Yeah, I think he's definitely, for me, the most exciting under 21 in the country. I think he's got it all as a batter. Like, I've said it in our dressing room, like, he should play all formats for England. He's that good. Like, and he's very good at adapting his game. Like, and it is a big shout because, you know, there's loads of talented kids that for whatever reason don't do that. But, you know, just the way he carries himself, the way his attitude towards cricket, the way his work ethic, just him as a person, and it all tied in with his ability to bat. You know, I don't see why it's not realistic.
Jamie, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck with the rest of your trip to Australia, and best of luck with the new season. We're only 6 or 7 weeks away. Gun to your head, Ben. Who is the next cab off the rank? Who is the next seamer to be called up into an England squad? So we had Archer, Wood, Atkinson, Cast, Tongue, Potts in the Ashes. Matt Fisher was called up at the last moment to outside of that group of players. Who is the most likely to come in, do you think?
Can I ask a question without the gun to my head? Is that all right?
You are also able to do that.
So, I mean, I don't know if it's a cheat because he has played Test cricket, but when I think of players who would fit under the Bazball regime who somehow haven't done it, I think of Joss Butler, I think of Adil Rashid, I think of Saqib Mahmood, basically, who obviously was such a star. Well, the star was the one bright spot of that West Indies tour just before McCullum comes in, then gets injured, has fought with injuries all the time since, has played some white ball cricket and looked good doing it. But I see there a guy who clearly has the stomach and the nous for it, and also the speed. Maybe England would look at his release height and think that, you know, he's
quite skiddy, which is a deviation from what they've done before.
Yeah, but then, you know, Mark Wood wasn't, you know, he's not 6'5", is he? So I think that there is a way that can fit in, and I just think that with a decent sort of, with a fair wind, basically, in a couple of first-class games where he goes pretty well, I think that there is a lot there that England would want to take a look at, basically. But the fact that would be going back to a guy who, you know, they had a look at a while ago, and is you know, he's a more senior player now, does speak to the dearth, I suppose. Even though there's a lot of guys that we kind of talk about as being potentially exciting, but none of them quite make the graduation to actually exciting, it feels like.
Well, certainly you can see why England are excited in them. Some of the guys in the under-19 World Cup squad, someone like Eddie Jack, who's looked exciting but has barely played first-class cricket. I know that's not been a barrier necessarily in the past, but I think it is interesting that if you look at the list of bowlers that are at the top of the wicket-taking list in Division 1, there aren't many that fit into the mould of a bowler that England are currently looking for. Someone like Jamie Porter is consistently at the top of the list. And someone like Jack White at Yorkshire, I think, is a really, really good bowler. I think it's the sort of bowler that New Zealand would probably pick in a Test squad, but England, you don't even see him on lists of bowlers that are being considered, because you sort of understand what this current regime have been looking for. I guess if there's a change in regime, that could change who the players are under consideration. Maybe someone like Sam Cook or Porter himself come back into the equation a little bit more. That's it for part 2. In part 3, a much needed and appreciated shot in the arm for the recreational game in England and Wales.
So I'm joined by Leshia Hawkins, the ECB's managing director of the recreational game. Leshia, one of the questions we get most often when there's a story about some part of the English game being in financial trouble is what's happening with the 100 money. Today we have part of the answer. So there's £45 million being put into a fund to support recreational cricket. Broad question, but what will that money be spent on? Who is it for? How can it be accessed? That sort of thing.
Sure. So yeah, we are extraordinarily fortunate in the recreational game to have this like once in a generation windfall. We want to focus it on capital investment into facilities. So we have a growing game, we have a changing game, we have new participants coming into our sport, and we recognise that generally the places that we play have not necessarily been set up for either the volume of the people that we're getting now playing cricket or just kind of the breadth of the audience. And 38 recreational cricket boards put together their own strategies in the last sort of 12, 24 months, and a facility strategy alongside it with a kind of cricket development angle. And every single one of them underlined to us that the biggest blocker to even sustaining the growth and the kind of increased desire for our sport, but also to sustain the future growth, is facilities. So we're going to focus on a 10-year, so a long-term strategic fund of 45 million of the hundreds money, but hopefully we're looking for that to unlock 150 million pounds minimum of value. So that's coming from either partnership funding or land or other kind of in-kind, but hopefully that will unlock 150 million pounds worth of facility investment and kind of really big projects. We already invest 8-10 million pounds a year into facilities and kind of small grants for net bays and so forth, but this will be a real kind of turnkey project so that every county of England and Wales can look back in 10 years' time and go, that was how the 100 changed our sport in this area. So a 10-year fund, which is really exciting. I mean, it's never enough. Whatever facilities budget you get, you could probably still multiply it by 10 and it would still never cover everything that everybody wants to do. But by gosh, it should make a pretty good dent in it.
Yeah, okay. And when you say facilities, what sort of thing are you talking about? Because I know that there was, a few years ago now, there was this big chunk of money, 35 million promised by the government for inner city indoor cricket centres, which then fell to 1.5 million recently. But now you've got, 40 million to start with, hopefully rising. But what facilities are we talking about? Is it just, fixing the club ground, or is it more inner city indoor centres, or what is it basically?
Be a mixture of them all. So it's going to be very much what a local region or a local county needs. There will unquestionably be more cricket domes, so outdoor covered facilities like we see in Bradford Park Avenue. That's kind of the benchmark. But there's already another sort of 3 or 4 of those that are in course. So we expect to see more of those kinds of facilities. So taking cricket to where cricket is less accessible. We know in cities there's just not as much grass space, but we know there's plenty of people that do want to play and get their fix all year round, morning, noon and night, as it's turned out to be in Bradford Park Avenue. So definitely indoor facilities, domes, refits of kind of school facilities, making sure again that the year-round access is there for pathway, but also for just your, hits and giggles, getting ready for the season in December, January, but also outdoor facilities. The big thing that we're focusing on is actually really the audiences, not the facilities themselves. So we've said any project that comes through for this fund has to meet the needs of at least one of either women's or girls, disabled participants, lower socioeconomic groups, or ethnically diverse participants. Of course, that's going to mean a lot of urban facilities just by virtue of where a lot of those audiences are, but every county in England and in Wales obviously has those audiences, but that's where we're going to be focusing to continue to grow the game in line with the North Star of most inclusive team sport, which is our goal.
Yeah, and is part of that, reaching that goal, almost splitting the conversation between sort of club cricket but recreational cricket more widely, that it's not just about supporting your sort of your village green, tea in the pavilion on a Sunday afternoon club game, but looking at cricket from like a wider point of view, and someone who is trying to rock up to play with a softball in almost like a sports hall is as much part of the cricket ecosystem as that club cricketer is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, club cricket, core cricket, the backbone will always be the thing which is probably the most important to us, because everything else we do will generally end up in those kinds of environments, but it is taking cricket to places where it wouldn't ordinarily be, automatically accessible. It's putting cricket in front of people that maybe would not find themselves at a cricket club. So yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, look, my role is looking after club cricket, your core Saturday cricket, dynamos, cricket in schools, cricket in communities. So it's kind of the whole gambit. But we're definitely going to split this fund, focusing, yes, on clubs, but also on making cricket accessible in non-traditional environments.
Yeah, and because we'll have lots of listeners who are keen club cricketers, and they're not being ignored here, right? So there's these interest-free loans, and the threshold for that has gone up, and so that's where, if is that the kind of way your mower's broken or you need a new cover, that sort of thing that can enable you to play year round, that's where you can go to get a loan, sort out a payment plan, and go and play cricket, basically.
100%. The existing funds that we have will continue. In fact, we're doubling the county grants fund with a focus on women's and girls cricket, obviously with a home World Cup in 2026. That makes perfect sense. And we've already got a strategic priority, obviously, to grow the game further for women and girls. But no, absolutely, while there's these amazing projects and once-in-a-generation opportunities, absolutely doubling down on the funding for cricket clubs, as I say, recognise that's where the ultimate magic happens. It's the number one priority in our strategy for the recreational game for this cycle. So yes, absolutely, we're going to be keeping the focus on the clubs as well as growing the game.
Okay, so let's talk about the health, I guess, of the recreational game more generally. So I guess starting with, the participation among adult men, it's not exactly rising, is it? But even sort of staying stable is doing okay compared to sort of wider societal trends for how much team sport men are playing.
Exactly that. I mean, just in the last 10 years and like post-COVID as well, there was, some sports that are still really struggling to respond and recover, to that loss and to that pause. Cricket, I guess, was quite fortunate being an outdoor sport and being let out a bit sooner and not being a heavy contact sport. But I think the stability of I call it men's cricket. It's actually open age senior Saturday cricket, obviously played by both genders, but that is stable. But as you say, kind of bucking the trend of an otherwise decline in other traditional team sports for sure. And
then let's talk about the trends in other demographics. So children start with, they're playing more cricket than before, right?
Exactly. So about 1,000 extra teams every year are starting to play. Now, again, some of that is fueled by the growth in women's and girls cricket, so girls teams expanding. But it's our number one kind of strategic priority. It's a Sport England measure of how many under-16s are playing regularly. If you've got that going in the right direction, you've got to think that the rest of your sport is going to be pretty healthy and you're sort of setting that up for success in the long term. So kids has been the number one focus of audiences for a number of years. We've had All Stars and Dynamos, the flagship national programmes. We need to do more in schools. I think we do okay in primary schools. We're expanding that. And obviously the MCC are doing their bit with the Knight Stokes Cup. But overall, the growth in teams is growing, fueled a lot by girls, but also record year last year for All Stars and Dynamos, which is really pleasing considering it's like 9-10 years old now.
Mm-hmm. And is there a feeling in women's and girls cricket, because there's almost like a critical density that you need to almost sustain these competitions, where if you don't have enough teams, you end up losing players because games get cancelled. You have to travel too far on a Saturday to go and play and that sort of thing. And we're actually reaching a stage where it can almost be more of a casual pursuit because there's more teams in your local area, and you have that guarantee that you're going to get a game when you want to play it and that sort of thing.
Exactly. It has always been quite a fractious area, both women and girls. I mean, even my experience of playing, you did see lots of teams that would pop up, play for a couple of years, then for whatever reason, just kind of disband or, go to another club. And that has been a trend, but you're right. It is sticking now. Having more women and girls out there playing sooner in the season really helps, because you work hard during the winter. Women and girls do train quite hard and we want to get better at sport. So having them getting out and playing sooner, as we saw last year, was huge. Having, as you say, just more teams, more kind of robust competition, proper league structure, it all helps with that kind of stickiness. And what we're trying to address is kind of the opportunity gap. So we know that boys will always have more opportunities to play than girls, for exactly that reason, just less teams available for girls. But we're closing that gap every year, and that's something we want to focus on. I don't think we need to sort of sell the concept now of women's and girls cricket. People have kind of got it, that it's a thing and it's viable. It's not easy, don't get me wrong. I realise that it takes a lot of volunteer hours to get those teams up and running, and the I will if you will, getting a few girls to go together. But it's definitely sticking now, and we have sort of a really good launch pad now, especially with Women's World Cup 26.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe to end, I don't know. So there are a couple of case studies, like you mentioned, the Bradford Park Avenue, but of projects that either this will green light or that have happened over the last couple of years that really show kind of what's possible with if you fund recreational cricket in the right way.
From a facilities kind of point of view?
I guess so. And particularly, I guess, maybe in women's cricket or something where like there's been some money put into something or that is going to be put into something, you're like, wow, that could really sort of transform cricket in that area.
Yeah, I struggle to, off the top of my head, go for one within women's and girls cricket, but certainly within kind of junior cricket, working together with the education sector, whether that's private or public, but just expanding that access, getting really good facilities and getting kind of regular access, because that's another thing that particularly women's and girls have struggled with, is getting your sort of regular slot for the nets or for, you know, your practice sessions in the indoor halls. So just expanding the availability of facilities, the quality of facilities, just automatically kind of, I guess, kind of lubricates that process. But yeah, there's umpteen sort of education sites in particular that I would point to where we've just been able to enhance the access, create that kind of stickiness, create the habit, particularly for women and girls, which is great. We just need to keep replicating that outside during the summer.
Well, that's all fascinating. So yeah, thanks very much for joining the show.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for today's show. Cheers, Ben, and thank you to our guests for joining us too. And thank you, listeners, for sticking with us all the way through to the end. If you enjoy the show, give us a like, give us a subscribe, leave a nice comment as well. And we'll be back on the Patreon after England's game against Sri Lanka on Sunday.